Do it from exponential potential to not being able to pay for the rental or even a bill from the dental. Now how's that for your mental? I've been through hard times too. The situation demands I bring the hard rhymes through. That's why I'm raw times too.
This summer, the famous Ghost in the Shell cyberpunk franchise becomes a playable RPG. Last summer, the tumultuous streets of Chicago in 1968 also became playable. I talked to the designers of both these experiences. Here comes some theme music. Welcome to episode 117 of Breakup Gaming Society, a podcast for board game freaks, hip-hop junkies, and people who call in sick and just straight up tell their bosses that they intend to stay home today, try on some new tracksuits, and enjoy some cigarettes. I'm your host, the Lord Chief Rocka, number one, broadcasting his final months, days, weeks, in Starkville, the only way he knows how. I thank you for indulging me. So for probably the 20th straight morning in a row, I got my ass yesterday up the ranch path to Starkville's new water tower again. All told, it's about 12 or 1,300 honest steps round trip, much of it on an incline that starts after you walk the dirt and gravel road past the three nearly identical derelict homes, two of which I own, and past the stone schoolhouse where the coal miners' children were taught. Of all the assets I squandered or neglected during my years in Starkville, this little hiking route now feels like the most egregious. I'd often talk myself out of heading to the state park because it was too hot or too windy or I was too hungover. All the time I had this, I too often evade the simpler, more doable thing and make a hard right turn into nothing, waste. The road switches back once in its climb, which leaves me looking straight down at my house, which looks sellable from this distance. Market is telling me otherwise. I could have been doing this every day. I guess I had to piss away everything else before I saw it with clear eyes and ready legs. I now want to naturally hoard more of it. I want to imagine a future where I have unlimited stores of these mornings. This little strip of desert village has a different quality of light now. Like, it's as jarring and clear and terrible as the sunlight on a piece of shit parking lot after you've been in an incredible movie for 2 hours. It's as pregnant as the ringing silence in the house after cherished guests have gone. I trust you, dear listener, to see this crepuscular glow in the gaps between these inadequate sentences. This is all a long way of saying that my playtime has suffered recently. I very much enjoyed my second play of Cartographers and my first walkthrough of Comancheria, although slow, benefited from a very sturdy how-to-play guide. It's good. But my regularly slow pace is now positively glacial. Luckily for us all, I got two very interesting designers on the horn for this episode's Games of the Week. The first, Alessio Cavatore, designer of the new Ghost in the Shell RPG. Our resident tabletop role-playing curation hound, Walt, leads a conversation with the disarming Cavatore, a veteran miniature tabletop game designer whose task was to help faithfully imagine the world of Masamune Shiro's legendary Ghost in the Shell manga as an RPG. That's releasing this summer under the Mantic Games banner. He shows us his passion for the material and the nuts and bolts of play itself. You don't want to just stroll into a firefight in this one. Then, a talk with Yoni Goldstein, designer of 2025's Chicago 68, a game that models the battle between activist groups and the Chicago Police Department, the Democratic National Establishment, and Mayor Daley's administration, who are all fighting each other for yardage and mindshare during that summer's wild Democratic National Convention. You'll learn about where this game sits in the tradition of historical conflict games and what Yoni's working on next. Tracks of the week, 3 recipes, 1 for soul, 1 for rocksteady, 1 for dope. This recipe book starts in Memphis, stops in Jamaica, and ends in Houston's 5th Ward in the 80s. So before we get into it, I want to stop and thank Doghouse Riley for sponsoring this episode. The Doghouse features the work of Tim Sisby, who puts hip-hop lyrics and visual puns on t-shirts that you can buy and wear. Give him a look. The link is in the episode description. So, next, the cyberpunk world of the beloved Ghost in the Shell franchise will soon be playable. Let's find out why you might want to be the latest agent for Section 9. It's Games of the Week.
Bitch, I kicked it, yup, I kicked it, come on, you couldn't bang with this if your name was Genghis Khan.
So, how do you think your first day as a Section 9 agent would play and feel? Designer Alessio Cavatore and writer Zach Baruch had to answer that question when Manic Games acquired the license to translate one of manga's most beloved franchises into a TTRPG, Ghost in the Shell. Breakup Gaming Society's resident indie TTRPG curator, Walton Wood, leads us on a talk with the disarming Cavatore, who talks about the thrill of being able to use all original art from the manga and the collaborative challenge of making a system that was true to the beloved and very dangerous setting. That talk went like this. Welcome back to Breakup Gaming Society's living series of interviews about cool, plucky, wild tabletop role-playing games that you could be playing that aren't Dungeons & Dragons, and we have a good one for you today. We are here with the designer of the new Ghost in the Shell tabletop role-playing game from Manic Games, Alessio Cavatore. Alessio, hi.
Hello, hi. Nice of you to have me.
Absolutely, we're excited about this one, and of course, in the lead role today is our resident curation hound, Walt. What's up, Walt?
Yo, it's me, Walt, and I'm in the big boy chair today, and I don't really know why, but we're going to roll with it.
I know why, and it's because you're gifted.
Aw, that's what they told me in elementary school.
That was the last time you heard it. Anyway, the famous manga and also movie, Ghost in the Shell, has been lovingly brought to a playable, detailed, and from what I understand, amazingly faithful to the created world. And with that in mind, Walt, I'm going to step back and let you and Alessio just dig into this new creation because I want to learn.
All right. Well, obviously don't feel afraid to hop in. But Alessio, first let me say it's a real pleasure to get to talk to you. And for the listeners, if you want sort of more of a broad overview of the Ghost in the Shell RPG, you should definitely go check out the interview on the Mantic Universe podcast. And then the designer doesn't have to repeat all the same stuff over and over again, and we can talk about some other things and dig a little bit deper into the topic. So that's where we're going today.
But I wanted to repeat all the same stuff.
Oh, well, if you want to do that, hell, let's ride with that.
No, go ahead.
First kind of big question is, what was it like for you personally as a longtime fan, especially of the manga, but also the franchise in general, to get to work on this game and to get to contribute to something that you love so much?
Well, it's a bit of a cliche to say that it's been a dream come true, really, because it has. I've been a big fan of this IP for many years, and I was there when the manga first came out, and it blew my mind. It was really innovative and dealing with thematics that at the time seemed the far future, and bizarrely now we're kind of living through those thematics right now, which is incredible, isn't it? Or terrifying, or depends on your point of view. But yes, it's a project of passion, and I couldn't believe when Kodansha, the publisher, accepted to give us this license, and basically a lot of the stuff that we do gets approved through by Kodansha, but also by the author himself, Masamune Shiro, which gives me every time as a fanboy, I have these fanboy moments during approval.
Well deserved, I think. And that's actually something that I wanted to ask you about. Did you know at the very beginning of the project that you would be able to use his original artwork in the instruction manual?
Yes, that was part of the original conversations of the negotiation, if you want, when you acquire the license. And that was, we get the right to use all of the artwork in the first 3 volumes. So we can use anything from that. And I definitely wanted to use as much as possible, because for me, I wanted to give the player, I was about to say the reader, because it's just a pleasure to go through that rule book. And it's a bit like going through the manga, and I can't wait for people to actually flick through that book and going, wow. Every time I show it to anybody, they're always like, wow, every page is crammed with artwork. I think we have like 1 or 2 pages that don't have any artwork and are just text. Everything else has artwork, color artwork, black and white artwork. It's a gorgeous book.
Yeah, that's something that really struck me and I'm excited about, is the layouts look spectacular from what I've seen. So I'm personally can't wait to actually get this book and go through it and see all the artwork again. And is it just Masamune Shiro's original artwork? Was there anything else done for the book, or are you just using his art?
Literally just his artwork, because definitely there's a couple of things we didn't want to do, and I guess Kodansha wouldn't have liked us to do, is to mix his art style with somebody else's art style. But yeah, all the artwork is from the comic, and there's no other artwork but his. We have done, graphic design, frames and layout, etc. But no extra artwork at all. No, it would have been bizarre, to be honest, to put side by side. Who do you get to draw that?
Yeah, that was my thought. And I didn't see any, but it was just something I was curious about, and that makes me even more excited that it's just full of his original art. That's fantastic.
Yes, they provided, basically they provided us a digital version of the manga of the 3 volumes, and then I would do the layout with a graphic designer. His name is Glenn Moore, and it's very good. It's been very labor-intensive process, but I think the outcome and the result is splendid, if I say so myself.
Oh, absolutely. Again, just the samples that I've seen just floored me how good it all looked. And I know there is a contingent out there that read RPG manuals for just leisure reading, and maybe, hey, someday we'll get it at the table, but I think this one is definitely going to, have a place on the shelf just for when you want to pull it down and flip through it and just, look at some really nice graphic design and layout and art.
Yeah, it's a good read. And I have to say, I don't know if anybody else is like me, but a lot of the RPGs I owned, I never played.
Yes.
I just played it in my head. I played them in my head, right? You dream and think, oh, yes, and maybe you make the characters and think about the characters a lot, etc. But then actually organizing a game is obviously a far more complicated manner.
Yeah, that's actually really wonderful for me to hear, because sometimes I will see an indie RPG game I've never played, but I've made characters for them, and I just love taking the books out. It's nice to know that impulse is shared.
Well, I think making characters for RPGs is possibly the best part of RPGs, isn't it? It is when you dream and you think about all the things that this character could do, and you play that in your head, the meta in your head, and often the reality is disappointing when, because you realize GMs and other people and etc. Like, well, the film in your head, the movie in your head is always fantastic. When you prepare characters. I mean, I don't know if it makes me a sad person, but often on D&D Beyond, I'll just make characters. That's kind of the thing I do the most. Just like, ooh, I wonder what a 20th level paladin would be like.
Yes, been there many times, my friend.
Exactly that. Yeah.
All right, well, let's indulge ourselves in the fantasy that we'll actually get to play a game someday. Specifically, the realism of the combat system and how that will feed into things like body augmentation and limb replacement, which obviously leads into sort of the main deeper philosophical themes of Ghost in the Shell as a whole. So that is an example that you specifically cited. And I'm curious if there are other ways that you bring other that aspect or other philosophical aspects of transhumanism and posthumanism into your game.
Well, that part, the thing you're referring to is, indeed, is the what we call the synthesis conflict, which is a section of the book that has an interesting story, because I wrote the core rules, the more mechanical rules, because that's kind of my set of skills, more my set of skills. And I got Zach Baru, who is a RPG writer, indie publisher himself. He has his own system called Animon, and worked with me, for me, a few times in the past, through the years. Like we worked together on Tales of Equestria. Mm-hmm. He particularly went very much in depth with the synthesis conflict, because again, the synthesis between two aspects in your character, so it could be, an example, Togusa is the character that is torn between his career in Section 9, his duty, his loyalty to the team on one side, and against his loyalty to his wife and his young child. And so that conflict, there's two aspects, family and team, in contrast. And Zach went very much into detail about how to kind of manage the relationship between the two elements, and the advantages and disadvantages you gain from that. Things that you can try to use yourself to your advantage in situations, but the GM can also use, to challenge you or to help you. For example, have you thought about doing this? Oh, actually, you're saying you're doing this, but your character actually, if you think about the contrast, wouldn't be very keen to do this because. So it's very much a narrative tool that can be used more or as much as one wants. Because interestingly, I had a bit of resistance at the start with this, because it felt to me too deep, even because I guess I tend to play very, very simple, maybe because I'm old. I always try to simplify things. Yeah, always minimize, a very minimalistic style. And I was thinking, this is really, really deep. It's almost a philosophical, maybe we should put it as an appendix, as an optional rule. And Zach was like, no, you're insane. This is the core of the shell. This is about the whole philosophy, conflict. And it was a very interesting, creative process. And he convinced me. I just went, no, you're right. I'm being perhaps too simple here, simplistic. Perhaps I was in this particular. I conceded once that I could. There can be such thing as too simple. So we put it in absolutely as a core part of the game when we were playtesting. I've seen a very good GM using that. And again, I was like, oh wow, I'm so glad I didn't resist this, because it's amazing. So in the hand of a good GM, it's fantastic. And it's also what leads the characters to, if a character survives long enough, eventually the two conflicts will get to crisis points, and the ultimate crisis where effectively your character would probably leave the team, and maybe as you retire the character, either because you're killed or because your conflict gets to the point where you either solve it or it kind of destroys you, and then you have to leave. There is this climatic, tragic, or maybe a cathartic ending for your character, and you move on to another character, which again, I've seen that being played out, and is very cool.
So that's something that I'm very interested in games in general, but especially here. I started to say to what extent, but did you mechanize that with game mechanics as far as managing the character's internal conflict and their character arc, or is that more left to your GM to kind of manage it narratively without numbers and dice rolls and resources involved with it?
It has a dice mechanic in it. The two aspects, like everything in the game, everything is graded in using the dice. So skills, for example, would start at the basic level would be a D4, which would be the equivalent of an untrained human. Then progress into D6, trained human, D8, hero level human, and then you start to move into the augmented territory. It is also interesting the fact that, going for a tangent, but I like the fact that even augmented humans can get up to D12 in their stats, particularly their body stat, the shell, as we say, the shell stat. Because there's a very good bit in the comic where Motoko is having a conversation with a friend, and the friend, they're talking about the fact that the most powerful cyber arm if it's implanted in a human body, because you lost the arms, but the arm is still implanted in a bone and flesh socket. The arm could have the power of lifting a car, but if you try to do that, then your arm comes off your shoulder, right? So, and that's why an augmented human can get up to D12, while a full body cyborg like Motoko doesn't have that problem. Her entire skeleton is made of titanium, whatever, hyper dense material. So that's why the big gap between the D12 and the D20, which is a massive jump, of course.
Yes.
That's the difference between an augmented human and a full body cyborg or an AI robot or something like that, but something that is not, doesn't have any organic component in the body, in the shell. And I completely diverted from your question, which was whether the synthesis is a mechanical. Yes, it's a mechanical thing based on the two aspects would progress through a series of crisis moments, important moments, where the GM will go, right, your loyalty to family is now gone from D6 to D8 because you saw your wife in danger, blah blah, etc. So the dice can be involved in tests. So there is a mechanical side to it. But again, because in a way, I would say it's a bit akin to the alignment in Dragons. Some people make a lot of it. Some people ignore it completely.
Yes.
just play as if that didn't exist, right? So I've seen players, that are very interested in role playing. They use that a lot and play very much. That becomes the focus of their gameplay. And I've seen players that absolutely couldn't care less and are all interested just in blowing up heads with sniper rifles. And to each his own.
Fair enough, but personally, I'm really excited to see that system is in place for kind of managing the character's struggle, because you mentioned D&D and it gives you an alignment, but I've scoured many DM manuals and there's never really any guidance on, character development, plot arcs, internal struggle, things like that. And good role playing is just like, if someone does good, give them some XP, and there's no guidance beyond that. So I'm always just really excited to see guidance on role playing in a role playing game. So I'm even more excited to see it here.
Yeah, there's quite a few elements in there, but I guess this is the most specific design, because you will see elements like skills and, of course, drawbacks and setbacks that you can choose, which again help with the whole role play element of it. When you go, I could get a few more skill points if I add another setback. I am now addicted to drugs, and somebody does that. And he plays into that very well. One of my friends who had a lot of fun with that, and. Or, I have an enemy in the criminal underworld that is really gunning up for me. So there's setbacks to help flesh out your characters as well as your synthesis component.
Excellent. And you mentioned the flip side, people just want to blow up heads. And you've said
yes.
You've made a pretty crunchy combat system because, let's face it, violence is going to happen. It's going to be a major element of the game. And I'm just curious... what is the flow of that? How does it feel in play? Is it supposed to be very slow and dramatic? Or have you tried to accelerate things and make it feel a little more like quote-unquote real-time combat where things are happening very, very quickly? Can you just tell me just about the feel of combat in the game?
Sure. Yeah, it's funny that you used it as a major element of the game, because every time somebody says major something in this thing, we always go, hee.
Well, I'm glad I could play into that at least.
All the time it's like, this is a major announcement. We said major. So in Ghost in the Shell, one thing that I don't like is when in combats, people start to discuss tactics. You're in the middle of a firefight and you go, I think you should go to the left and break through this door. No, I think I should use a grenade here. No, you're really wrong. And you're kind of thinking, this is split seconds decisions. There is no way these people are having this conversation.
Yes.
It's like, So I really hate that. And but there's actually in game, I created a rule specifically for that. And it basically is the fact that obviously all the agents are connected wirelessly. During an action scene, you can communicate in very short sentences. So you can shout one very short sentence, but no more, right? To simulate that there is no time. And that's when you're connected. But of course, when you're connected, you can communicate better, but you're vulnerable to hacking, of course. Yeah. So, and every character can put themselves into closed mode, basically kind of airplane mode. Effectively, you switch off your connection to protect yourself against the wireless hacking. So it becomes more tricky to hack you. Either you're an Uber hacker, or with an infrared signal or something, or you have physically to get to your ports at the back of the neck and plug in to kind of get in. When you set yourself in closed mode, you're protecting yourself against hacking. But what I meant is then you stop being able to communicate with other people wirelessly. So all you can do is one word, a single word. So because that again is the time. I'm sure that from playtesting people always abuse that. Of course, there's always that was 3 words. Like, yeah, right. Get down is 2 words. Like, oh no, only 1 word. Stuff like that. Of course, it can be strict, but the idea is if you are not wirelessly connected, you get very little communication. If you are wirelessly connected, you get more, but still not huge amount. Yeah, I really wanted to get rid of that tacticizing during combat, which just doesn't work in my head. So yeah, so fast, furious, yes, brutal, really brutal. To give you an idea, the example I always use is there's body locations for the hit, and your head. Each location has a number of hit points, and in an augmented human, a normal human, your skull has your head has 2 hit points. Well, a normal pistol, the most basic pistol, we're not talking about the magnums or anything. Just a normal pistol does D6 damage. So if you're hit in the head, there is a decent chance you die. If you're hit in an arm, which has got 3 points, there's a chance you lose the arm very quickly. And so the whole idea has 2 effects. One is makes firefight scary, really scary. It's trying to recreate the idea that you don't really want to be around when automatic weapon starts firing, etc. It's like, no, that's not great. And you try to avoid that. But if you're in, then you will lose bits, I'm sure, at some point, and that obviously leads into the old cybernization and replacing body parts with synthetic parts. The other thing that I don't know, it's a different mechanic. I don't know if we want to get into that, but the main difference between the main characters and the NPCs is that main characters have ghost whisper points, ghost whispers, as we call them, which is part of the reason why you last a bit longer normally. The NPCs. I don't know if you want me to go into that.
Sure.
Well, yeah, so the different mechanic, again, is not a particularly innovative mechanic. It exists in other systems, but the idea that you have a currency that the GM can assign to players if they do really cool stuff, for role-playing your character very well, to make spectacular performance or actions and takedowns, whatever you do in a very spectacular, unnecessarily spectacular fashion to entertain people. So you get assigned these GW points, Ghost Whispers, and then you accumulate these points and you can spend them to modify outcomes, modify roles, locations. Depends on how you're playing. The more you can change the plot slightly. Oh yes, I haven't forgotten to search those guys. Yes, I'll spend a few plot points a few whisper points, Ghost Whisper points to say, there you go. Now I can change the plot. Ghost Whispers, because obviously in IP. There is Mokoko, the major always says that she listens to her ghost whispering to her, which you can take as a way of, that's about intuition, experience, instinct, the idea of dodge, duck. There's a bullet flying past and will hit you in the shoulder instead of hitting you in the head, kind of thing, or miss you altogether. But then later in the comic, you start to see that there's actually a presence literally talking to her, and it's like, okay, what is this? Is this, that is a metapsychic agency, there's a psychic agency in the Japanese government. And so, it gets, was that whisper something more than just intuition kind of thing.
One thing I wouldn't mind knowing now that you've I'd like to learn about one of the characters you made in context of the system we just learned about.
Okay, yeah. Obviously, I made quite a few. So which one would I go for? Because we play tested. Also, because I'm the author and I normally take a lot of notes, I normally wait for other people to pick all of their characters and then go for the archetype that is missing. So, it's a classic, okay, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a hacker, you want to be a classic soldier guy, sniper, etc. And then I go, all right, you guys don't have a detective, or you guys don't have somebody who's good at repairing technology, and I'll be your scientist, that guy. So I always try to serve the group because I'm the guy that wrote the game, so I don't want to when I play this. But just characters that I play that I enjoyed playing. The older I get, the more kind of like I start to not like people. I don't know if you. It's like, so a bit of a misanthrope, really. So I played this character which was absolutely cynical and hated interacting with people. Yeah, like almost unable to speak. The hacker that is introvert to the point of being, like unable to interact with other people. So choosing the setback where you're going to go, loner. So, and your synthesis conflict is between actually wanting to be alone all the time and actually having to interact with people. And playing the hacker was fun, as in I really didn't want to do anything, and I was very cantankerous with my teammates and not very popular, really, but obviously a good asset because it was a good hacker, which in the game is very powerful.
So your goal is to enrich play by making sure the cast and thereby the capabilities are rounded out. But as I understand it, any character you create are all begin as trainee agents in Section 9, yes?
Yes, absolutely. But trainee agents in Section 9 normally are taken from different arms of the Japanese, the security forces or army or civilian fields as well in the case of scientists, etc. So you're not just a young guy that has no training. You are an experienced cop, an experienced scientist, an experienced secret agent, an experienced soldier, mercenary, whatever. So you come to the attention of the brass of Section 9 because you're good at what you do. So you start at a level which is not that of a normal civilian. You're already an excellent agent. If you were just the police, you would be standing out as this guy's good at what he does. But then Section 9, obviously, within Section 9, then you're a trainee because everybody else is so much higher up than you are.
Makes total sense. Thank you.
All right. So, looking ahead, and I understand if you cannot ask or if you cannot answer this question, but in the future, if you could expand on the core game, what you've already done with any kind of supplement or expansion or anything, like what would be your dream product to add to this line?
Well, I don't know if you know my background, but I am more, known as a miniature war game designer than a role play game designer. So for me, it's very natural to say, well, of course I would like a skirmish war game, right?
I should have just known that. I should have asked, so would you like to add a skirmish war game? Oh, yeah, great. Next question.
Yes. Naturally, I go there, of course. And whether it's a board game with miniatures or actually a proper skirmish war game, naturally I would go that way. That's my instinct. But of course, now the license belongs to Mantic Games. So obviously, I don't make those calls anymore. Thanks God, I guess. So Ronnie will make that call. But yeah, what I would like to do a skirmish war game, of course.
Excellent. And I hope that this does well enough that that becomes an acceptable risk that you actually do get to do that. My last question is there any question that you wish an interviewer would ask you about this and they haven't yet? Sing out. I'll go ahead and ask it for you.
Oh dear. When does it come out, I guess?
So when can we expect to put this work of art on our shelves?
Well, I would dearly love you to be able to do that in summer at some point. I don't know. July, maybe. We'll see. But yes, not It's not far, thanks God. Yes. At least that's what I know today. But of course, plans keep changing. The work keeps getting in the way. But I genuinely cannot wait for people to share that, because it's a project of passion, it's a project of love, and I want to share that with my geeky friends that love Ghost in the Shell. I really want to go, look at this, look what I've made.
No, it definitely comes through. Like, I can tell all the time that you care very deeply about this and are excited about it. And I was interested in it, but after doing some research and talking to you personally, like, I'm there. I cannot wait to get this in my hands.
Wow.
And God willing, get this to a table with some friends.
Oh, thank you. That's a big compliment.
Speaking of getting to a table with friends, I'm curious, being that you and Zach and the Manic teams have been laboring on this for so long, when you finally get it done, do you have any desire to play it, or do you need a break from it? Or is this being played right now with you and your colleagues?
Now we are going to start to promote it. So going from the production phase to the promotion phase, and the promotion phase has a lot of play in it. So yes, I'm really looking forward to go back with the guys that we did the playtesting with, because we did a lot of playtesting initially, of course, refining the rules. So we're now going into the promotion, our launch phase, so to speak, which is exciting, and hopefully will give us a bit more time to play games. Yes, I would love to. Yes,
that was my other question, and that is, Alessio, when and if you have the time, what's on your table now these days?
Well, I always try to make sure that every week, roughly, I get to play D&D with my friends, and this is my friends from Italy that I grew up with. So the guys I was at high school with and university with, and we started playing, in the 80s, and so it's roughly the same group all the time. And obviously, the life has taken us, different countries, different places, but managed pretty much every week to convene digitally and on Beyond and play some D&D together, which is it's nice. It's really nice. And one day maybe we can play some Ghost in the Shell on I don't know, Roll20 or something like that. Hope so. Fingers crossed.
Well, if you and your colleagues there do a playthrough that I can watch, I would certainly like to see how everything we're learning about springs into motion. Sounds really cool.
That's in the boat. That's being planned. Yeah, it will happen. Yeah, yes.
I actually have something, if you'll indulge me and let me bend your ear with a story real quick.
Please.
So a few years ago, I was collaborating on a screenplay for a short film about a guy who's trying to... He used to have a D&D group, and they haven't played in a while. And it's about him fantasizing about getting a group back together. But the conceit is it's a dream sequence, and he's picking his players like it's a professional sports draft. And at the very end, his daughter wakes him up and hands him a copy of Tales of Equestria. And it got cut from the final script, and the movie never actually got made. But that was my first brush with you, so it's really exciting for me to actually get to talk to you.
That is so cute. Yeah, that's great. I didn't know. Wow, amazing. Yeah, I made Tales of Equestria with my daughter, for my daughter in a way. And she was 6 when she started, and of course now she's 17 and doesn't play a lot of role-play games anymore, I guess. But it's lovely to hear.
We're all going to wish you just the best of luck in getting this beautiful and detailed and compelling product across the board and into people's hands. Of course, I'm curious now to see what happens and what kind of stories people start talking about when it's on the table and moving, of course. So I'm looking forward to that. At this point, slated for summer 2026 from Mantic Games. This has been a discussion with me, your host, the Lord Chief Rock, and number 1 of Breakup Gaming Society. We've been talking with Walt, our resident RPG curation hound, who has been leading a discussion with Alessio Cavatore, who has designed Ghost in the Shell, along with writer Zach Butter. So cheers to everybody. I can hear all of your circuits humming and your various panels clicking into place as we ready for battle. And I wish everybody best of luck with quantifying your internal conflicts and telling a good story from it. Walt, thank you so much. And Alessio, like we always say on the show, may you fight long and well.
May you fight long and well, boys.
May you fight long and well.
We'll do our very best. Adios. Once again, this new game will release this summer. Head over to Mantic Games website, and they have a Ghost in the Shell page where you can sign up for newsletter updates, which I suggest you do if you want to start building up the armory for your agent and start honing those internal conflicts for great storytelling. Next up, we're going to talk to Yoni Goldstein about the riotous summer of Chicago 68. So I remember last year when Chicago 68 came out, and because my pace is slow and my shopping list is small and fickle, I forgot about it until I made contact with Yoni and realized I wanted to talk about this game. I'm very interested in stuff that drills down into how to translate boiling little pockets of human activity into playable systems and why people make the choices they do. Yoni told me along the way, we covered everything from our favorite documentaries about the era to what he's working on next, which is another pocket of human conflict that's going to get his unique treatment. But first, I wanted to learn more about Chicago 68. My chat with Yoni went like this.
Hello, it's the Lord Chief Rocket #1, host of Breakup Gaming Society, having a chat with a very interesting cat today who made a very interesting game that you haven't heard about. You should have. Came out in 2025, called Chicago 68. The designer is here, Yoni Goldstein. What's up, Yoni?
Hey, Nate. How's it going?
Borderline splendid. And, Yoni is the designer of the Chicago 68 board game, published by, is it Taitt?
Yeah, the Taitt Foundation.
Taitt Foundation, thank you. When Chicago 68 published officially, I believe it was in 2025, it was one of those ones that stuck in my consciousness and then sort of faded for newer items on the shopping list. So when I made contact with Yoni, I thought it was a great opportunity to throw my little flashlight back onto that game because it was beautifully executed and fascinating in scope. So, Yoni, I'm going to try to explain Chicago 68 to people who are listening and who may not have heard of it. Chicago 68 plays in solo mode. I believe you made a solo mode, but also seats up to 4 players who are playing as the primary forces that either descended on or existed in Chicago during the infamous Democratic National Convention when there were riots in the streets, largely driven by activist wings who wanted to influence what the big wigs of the Democratic Party were doing and influence public perception in context of the Vietnam War, which was ramping up to a terrible degree. And then 2 other factions can play establishment forces in the forms of Chicago Mayor Richard Daley's administration and the Chicago Police Department. How did I do?
Oh, you did great. Yeah. And just to put it a little bit into a historical context, right? This is obviously the year 1968, a year that starts with the Tet Offensive and sees, all these ruptures of civil unrest in Paris, in Tokyo, in Mexico City, and here in the United States, in Chicago. And this is, as you mentioned, kind of during the Democratic National Convention. This is when the Democratic Party is more or less sort of equally divided on the question of the Vietnam War. This is right after the riots following the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy, a very violent and tumultuous time in American history. And the game, which you mentioned was published in 2025, we ran the Kickstarter, so we went live with it in 2024, which was during the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, during our last election as well. So there are, parallels in the game with, this sort of ongoing historical account of Yeah, street violence, unrest, police riots, that kind of overall subject matter.
When a designer explores and rigorously gamifies little pockets of history like this, I found I've got some sort of receptor in my body that just tunes in when people use these kind of settings I'm kind of unfamiliar with, and be like, playing this would be a sort of history lesson and a strategy challenge. Yes, last summer I was lucky enough to befriend Dave from the Dude Take Your Turn blog and Michael from the Board Games Chronicle, and they invited me to rally the troops, and I had my first experience with a coin ICS game. We played Vijay Nagara all summer.
It's a great game.
I loved it. And of course, that got me reading again about counterinsurgency / irregular conflict series. And it was during that time that Chicago 68 surfaced on my radar.
I was really interested in creating a game that wasn't necessarily an exercise in verisimilitude or simulation, but instead wanted to create a kind of dialectic between sort of the contingencies of history, the political horizons those historical events afforded, and the different possibilities of action that you can take in response to both, the presence of the other player and player's actions, but also, the various unpredictable outcomes of the events which emerge from the participation of large groups of people in conflict, right? Especially in street conflict, in these like mob chaos situations.
Yeah, Yoni, do you want to just give people who may have not read about it an idea of how it works mechanically?
Sure. So Chicago 68 plays over the course of the 3 days leading up to the nomination of the 1968 presidential candidate who's going to run against Nixon. And the way the game plays is that you have on one side, you have the establishment, and the establishment is comprised of like the mayor's office and the Democratic machine, right? And this sort of includes all the sort of operatives in the smoke-filled back rooms deciding on who the delegates are going to nominate and how that process is going to play out. And also the rank and file police officers who are out there along with the National Guard, FBI informants, Secret Service agents, and all that, right? Counter to them are the demonstrators who represent sort of the small cadre of sort of spectacle focused sort of mischief makers, the Youth International Party or the Yippies, and then as well as mobilization to end the war in Vietnam, which is sort of a larger body of protesters on the streets, and they include civil rights activists, people who joined the marches, anti-war, anti-imperialism protesters, that kind of thing. Right off the bat, the establishment occupies a position of power because not only do they have more force strength on the board, but they are also capable of interacting more directly with the political dimension. But their victory conditions are twofold. They have to both make certain that, LBJ's loyal vice president, Hubert Humphrey, gets elected, or nominated rather, for, the upcoming election. And they also have to maintain sort of control, law and order and the streets. Their ability to shape the narrative is measured by the exposure track, right? So you earn exposure points whenever you're able to resolve conflict in your favor. And this is more on like the sort of the kinetic street level dimension, right? So the establishment has to win on both the victory conditions, while the demonstrators, on the other hand, are much more agile. And for them to win the game, they can pivot between one of the two victory conditions, typically, they're not going to have a lot of access into the convention hall, into the political like inner workings, but they might find a way in there. And if they don't, they can also gain exposure through marches, rallies, and direct confrontation with the police.
Yep. They're trying to push two levers. The one is to sway what's happening inside the convention itself, right? Because they want to get delegates who are anti-war, and then they want to do what you're talking about, which is win a sort of PR war.
Yeah. So ultimately what you're doing in Chicago 68 is producing a historical account of the event. And it may parallel the the actual historical event, or it may veer off in different directions. But what you're looking at is, how is this thing remembered, right? Like, who is able to use actual bodies, material presence in this world to force a historical trajectory into being.
Yes, and I want to say for those of you who this is maybe skated across your field of vision, but take a look at it, because everything you described is done with an incredible amount of urgency and style in the presentation of the game. It looks like you're sort of reading a newspaper about it, but the pictures are alive and about to reach out and grab you.
Yeah, I'll say that, the game started as an iteration on a Jim Dunnigan project called Chicago, or Mrs. O'Leary's Cow, Where Are You When We Really Need You, which is it's a game that he published in Strategy and Tactics in 1970. And it really fascinated me that you could design a game as a form of reportage, because it was a game that was directly responding to his experience witnessing both the 1968 convention riots and also earlier that year or the previous year, the riots and protests at Columbia University. I began working with that as an iteration, and over time, the game design developed and evolved past that original design. But there are like elements that are still vestigial forms in the current game. What fascinated me was this idea of leveraging war game mechanics to tell an anti-war story, right? Or a story about an anti-war movement. And also it made sense, right? Because what we're looking at is a mix of clashing and electioneering, rallies and tear gas, public marches. You see the protesters taking like flanking maneuvers from the parks to Michigan Avenue. You see sort of like the command and control structures, both on the police side and the demonstrator side, breaking down. And it was just a really interesting way of modeling civil conflict and civil unrest at the same time that, I'm living in Chicago. We are looking out our window and participating in like the George Floyd protests in 2020, and then the DNC in 2024, and then Operation Midway Blitz in 2025. So there is this sort of ongoing sense of urgency that I was interested in exploring, almost as if this was a documentary film or a form of reportage.
That's precisely how it feels and sounds when I look at the game and listen to others who have experienced it, which I understand it plays at a head count of 2, or you can have where one person operates all the protester factions and the other one operates both the establishment factions, or 4, where one person will be the police department, another Daley's administration, et cetera, et cetera. But did I read that it's also soloable?
Yeah. So you can also play 3-player with 2v1, and there is a solo version where the establishment is operated by a sort of AI card system, and it's a totally different deck of cards that you swap in and carry out different actions for the mayor faction and the police faction. I found it very interesting to design the solo mode because it allowed for certain strategic possibilities that you couldn't actually act out in a multiplayer game, because the way that the priority system works for the bot is that wherever you take actions as a demonstrator creates sort of like heightened activity priority for that area. So it allows you to create sort of strategic maneuvers where, for example, you can create a distraction on one side of the board while quietly moving or positioning your forces in another side of the board, right? And in some ways, it captures a little bit more the reality of the sort of cat and mouse chase that was happening between the demonstrators and the police forces and the National Guard. So I really enjoy designing the solo system. And then, of course, once you have the solo system, you can also play this game cooperatively. So you can split the demonstrators into two different player factions and then play together against the bot.
And fight against. I think that's very interesting, especially because 90% of my play is solo. To know that playing it that way gives you, sounds like a more granular tactical repertoire.
Yeah.
That's very cool. When I was reading about the whole coin ICS school of design and the people who love them, and when I saw Chicago 68 pop up on my feeds, I assumed it was a coin ICS game, but I don't see you would formally identify it as such, if I remember my reading.
No, it's not really a coin game. It shares some similarities, but there isn't that initiative system. It doesn't have the event card system. So I was really interested in events being more connected to a tableau that you build. And so it represents the potential activities rather than, like an event that just transpires because you happen to pull it from the top of the deck. Right. There is a little bit of that sort of line draw with the different decks, but for the most part, it is a game that's driven by action selection. You have your action menu. You can do different types of activities on the board, and these will trigger events as with a little bit more player agency.
Understood. So it's perhaps coin or irregular conflict series inspired or adjacent, but you wanted to change the dynamics for your purposes. That's cool.
It is its own system, and of course there aren't any hidden players, right, or players that you activate by flipping over and then they become targetable, right? Because although there was a sense of an insurgency here, it's not guerrilla warfare, right?
Right.
There are different dynamics at play here, and part of it is also I wanted a little bit more open information just to reflect the fact that everything was being played out on television, right? People were watching this. The establishment had informants within like the demonstrator ranks. The establishment also sort of would announce what they're doing on the nightly news. So I wanted there to be a lot more openness and visibility and readability in the way that the game unfolds. But definitely taking inspiration from coin, definitely taking inspiration from other games that have adapted coin systems. I could think, of course, Root is one of them.
Oh, I didn't realize Root shared DNA with coin.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, if nothing else, has pushed it back into the top of my small and very slow moving hunt list, and I hope other people will consider it as well. Have you ever thought about doing an expansion where it's Miami for the Republican National Convention, and you're part of the teams that have to prep Gore Vidal and William Buckley for their series of debates on ABC?
Sure, yeah. I have thought of and took some steps towards designing a fifth faction or a third faction, depending on how many players you're playing with, which occupies the position of the news media and having to balance both the coverage of the events with the demands the state was having on those news outlets as well, and both sort of behind the scenes and as we know, with Dan Rather being physically attacked in the convention hall, like some direct intervention in the coverage. Yeah.
As a documentarian yourself, I'm curious to know if you've ever watched, I think it was Best of Enemies.
What is it? Remind me what Best of Enemies is about.
It acknowledges the mayhem in Chicago, but mostly focuses on ABC, which was the laggard of the three networks, saying, let's put William F. Buckley and Gore Vidal in a multi-night debate, and ABC unexpectedly auguring what political media was to become, which is debate and advocacy media. And it chronicled the increasing nastiness of the debate, which I think culminates with what Vidal calling Buckley a fascist, and Buckley calling him a slur and saying he was going to punch him in the face.
Yeah, I haven't seen that film. I know about the Buckley Vidal debates, and of course they're fascinating. I hear what you're saying, but also, remember, this was like a time when we had public intellectuals who would go on the national television, right? In some ways, like, I would love to see more debates like that happen today. Yeah, we've lost that. For me, if we're talking about like a cinematic touchstone, it would be Medium Cool by Haskell Wexler. Have you seen that one?
No, but I've seen it mentioned in reference to people who were talking about your game. I don't know if you mentioned it in the description on Board Game Geek, but I remember the title, but I have nothing to attach it to.
Yeah, I highly recommend seeing it. It's a narrative fiction film, but with a lot of connections to real documentary reportage that was happening at the time with collaborations with Studs Terkel. And it was shot at the convention riots. So there's this mix of, live footage or documentary footage as it happens with the actors in there. And it also grapples with this question of the independence of the media and government and state intervention into media coverage. And of course, the game itself has quotes from like FBI memoranda, which talk about intervening in the media exposure of the demonstrators and how to shape the narrative around that. But yeah, I highly recommend watching Medium Cool. I don't recommend Aaron Sorkin's Trial of Chicago 7 for many reasons, but there are sort of interesting scenes there that like visualize what was going on. And if you're interested in a really great sort of experimental short documentary, I recommend Jean Genet Chicago, which I think you could just find online through Vimeo.
Excellent, I will. As I understand it, Yoni, you let me know that you've got something else in the works, and based on the way you helped me see behind the veil of the workings and the whys of Chicago 68, I'd love to know to what degree you want to share what's next.
Sure. So the main project I'm working right now is called The Knights of King Lud, which is about the Luddite War and Industry 1811 to question mark. It is a multi-victor collaborative game of industrial sabotage, where players take the roles of various secret societies working in tandem, but with their own motivations to smash mills, to assassinate manufacturers, to form early Republican assemblies, and basically wreak havoc on the manufacturing enterprises in the English Midlands.
And my most recent frame of reference for this was something Cory Doctorow wrote about, which was, and the things he kept repeating, and you can backstop this, is that the destruction of machinery wasn't the goal, it was a tactic. And that a lot of this was organized by guilds who didn't want to be shut out of the quality assurance process.
Yeah, it was a labor movement, and the fact that they're remembered as technophobes speaks to ultimately that it speaks to their loss as a social and labor movement. But yeah, I mean, I think you're totally right. They were concerned with the quality of the linens and the textiles. They were concerned with child labor. They were concerned with the environmental pollution. Many of these weavers, these croppers, these textile workers were working with what at the time was advanced technologies in their own cottage workshops or their own small enterprises. So they weren't necessarily opposed to the machinery itself. They were opposed to labor exploitation.
Will this be a similar system as Chicago 68, where there's various factions fighting for influence along the same framework, or are you coming up with new mechanics for this one?
It's a totally different system. In fact, how I started designing this is by imagining some sort of a universal expansion pack that could be added to industrial network building games like Brass or Steam or Carnegie or one of those Euros, where you would be playing on top of a map board in which you've built mills and factories and stuff like that. And then another faction would come and burn them down, right? And sort of exist in between the network spaces, in between the rail lines and the whatever transportation paths you've built. And over time, I developed this to a standalone game, and I pitched it to the same publisher, the Taitt Foundation. This will be a game in which you're positioning your army of weavers. You're building a tableau of cards, which will be activated by the different conspiracy actions that you take, like rallying your new recruits, assembling raiding parties, going on sabotage operations, assassinations, that kind of thing. And it's essentially it's a dice pool building game with various means of modifying rolls, that kind of collaborative experience.
And how granular do the raids get? I assume this isn't like Sniper Elite labor version.
No, it is abstracted somewhat, or at least rather the point of view is a little bit more distant. So you have this map of the Luddite Triangle in the English Midlands, and there are 3 mills that you move your weavers into. The granularity comes through the cards, various historical accounts, both drawn from primary source documents as well as myths and songs about these people, and the response of the Regency in power, right, and their collaboration with the industrialists to control, suppress the Luddite revolts.
Is it same player count and dynamics where there's 4 potential factions to control, or are there more or fewer?
Yeah, so right now there are 6 different personas that your secret society is going to or possibly organize around. Each one will provide their own motivation, which is a victory condition. So you have somebody like Lord Byron, who went before the Parliament and spoke in favor of the Luddites and wrote poems about them, to George Muller, who assassinated a manufacturer, or the Molyneux sisters, who were teenage girls who led an armed mob against a mill. You pick one of those personas, and then you choose a role for them, whether they're an advocate or a firebrand or a radical Republican. And there are 5 total roles. And so there are different combinations of the faction that you're building, essentially. And then each one, of course, comes with asymmetric abilities and also specific adversities that are going to be seeded into the main draw deck. So it's a bit of I would say it's PAX adjacent in the way that it plays out, but it's not strictly a PAX market game. I was trying to imagine basically what a PAX game would look like instead of a capitalist sort of economy that drives the car market. It would be more of a gift economy.
Sure. So yeah, we're doing like Panamax, except all the workers are trying to push the cargo overboard.
Yeah. And then the role of the commons plays a major role. So a major part of it is the commons, which provides the resources and the various personalities that tell the story of the Luddite revolts.
I'm interested to see it just so I can read the cards, because I do find in the course of these things, it's not my primary goal, but it always happens, is you find out lots of things about an era that you never suspected.
Oh yeah.
That invites you to shift your perspective from whatever the victors said in 2 paragraphs about the last 50 years to something deeper, wider, and more interesting, which kind of seems like the point.
And of course, these are secret societies, right? So we don't have a full account of everything that they did and how they did it. We have trial transcripts. We have sort of fables. We have like an oral history. We have all these sort of peripheral ideas about who they were, what they were up to, but the game, unlike Chicago 68, has to be a little bit more open to interpretation and like allow for more historical fiction to play a part as well, right?
That was something I was curious about.
Yeah.
Is there a chance in this game to produce a historical outcome, such as, yep, the mills are all in cinders and the shareholders have been brought to heel?
Yes, it's possible to destroy all the mills, and in fact, like that's one of the global victory conditions for the Luddite cause. But what does that mean in you do that in 1812? What does that mean in 1815 or 1850 or 1890? Right, that's outside of the scope of the game.
Makes absolute sense. Are you at the point where you're playtesting it now, or where are you at in the process?
We're pretty late into playtesting, so I'm working with the developer, Joe Dewhurst, on this, who was also the developer of Chicago 68 and also has been the developer of a lot of coin games as well, so you might recognize his name. We're pretty late into playtesting. I've had a number of in-person playtests at the past couple weeks with, shout out to the University of Chicago has a game design center, and they've been very accommodating and allowing me to, do multiple iterations, and that's been very helpful.
Well, game design center. Oh, to live in a city again.
We have multiple universities with multiple game design centers, which is wild.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, it's another reason why. Well, Chicago makes, in my opinion, the perfect food, which is the Chicago hot dog with everything on it, and now is the perfect bed of game resources as well. It's another reason to miss the place or crave being there again. I'm curious, to what degree you have time. What game has most been on your table?
That's a good question. I've been playing my fair share of ARCs. The campaign mode. I've been playing Paulo Mori's Battlefields of the Napoleonic Wars, which I think is an excellent game. Let's see. Dan Bullock's Penitent. Have you had a chance to play? That's a solo game.
No. What's the setting?
In Penitent, it's the early days of carceral reform, and you play as Quakers designing a prison system.
Oh wow, no, I would remember if I'd read about that.
Yeah, so that's pretty great. One of the games I've been playing a lot lately is John Company by Cole Worley, the second edition.
I've read a lot about it. I'm jealous.
And that certainly has had an influence on the design of the Luddite game as well, undeniably. But yeah.
It sounds like a rich and very diet. Good on you.
Yeah. Another project I'm working on is with Fred Saval, Homo Ludens, and we're making a new game. It's a totally different system, but it is about the French experience of 1968, specifically around like May 68, which includes both the Paris upheavals as well as the various labor actions taking across the country in that month.
Again, something else that would probably serve me to learn about, because you say French politics, and all I see is angry columns of tractors heading into the Capitol. But
yeah, not that far from that either. Yeah,
this was one of the more toothsome and fun talks I've had in a while. So once again, we've been talking with Yoni Goldstein, designer of Chicago 68, and a forthcoming game about Luddites, and then another game coming after that. If you want to check it out, they're published by Dietz. That's Dietz. Is that the publisher?
So the May 68 game is not going to be published by Dietz. I think we're going to go with a French publisher for that.
Gotcha. But I believe you can buy Chicago 68 now still from the Dietz online store, right?
Yes, and the Luddite game will come from the Dietz Foundation as well. It'll be a Kickstarter in August, and it'll be available on their online store.
Wonderful. Well, Yoni, do stay in touch with us and poke your head back in the room as that August date approaches. I'd be happy for my small part to say something about it. And once again, I've been the Lord Chief Rock and number one, talking with designer, documentarian, filmmaker, Yoni Goldstein. Yoni, like we always say at the end of a traditional episode, we appreciate your time and may you fight long and well.
Thank you.
So within minutes of having completed this talk, I jumped on the Dietz Foundation website and ordered this thing. I was so glad to be reminded of it, and having learned more about it, it really feels like a solo experience I want to dive into and explore. So it's on the way, providing, of course, I can figure out how to squeeze it into the next few weeks' chaos. Although I do plan for it to hit my mailbox and will report back. Yoni, thank you once again for a far-ranging and stimulating chat.
Bitch, I kicked it, yup, I kicked it. Come on, you couldn't bang with this if your name was Genghis Khan.
You like a good breakdown and build-up? One of my faves is Memphis Soul Stew by King Curtis and the Kingpins, where he breaks down all the ingredients that went into, according to him, a classic Memphis soul track from the 60s.
Today's special is Memphis Soul Stew. We sell so much of this, people wonder what we put in it. We're going to tell you right now. Give me about a half a teacup of bass. Now I need a pound of fatback drums.
Now, it wasn't long after this one released in the late 60s that rocksteady giant Lynn Taitt and his band heard that, liked it, and made a Jamaican version.
My recipe for soul food. Give me some soul, Basie. A skinful of drums. A ticket of ivory gladdy.
By the way, if you need to make a summer afternoon bounce with joy, any of Lynn Tait's instrumentals and his many collaborations from the rocksteady period in the mid-late 60s Jamaica, guaranteed. I put my name on it. Anyway, about 2 decades later, the Geto Boys are bullying their way into the national gangster rap conversation and putting Houston on the map through sheer force of will. They raid Curtis's original composition for samples, but the ingredients are not the kind you're going to get at the grocery store or in a studio.
Yo, tell him, Jay. Okay, I'm gonna share this recipe with y'all. Hey, John.
What up?
Give me an ounce of that Ether Fifth Ward bass. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yo, Doug. Give me a half a key of uncut drum. Oh, yeah. Yeah. a pound of them horns with red hat cess in it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Say, fella, give me a ton of everything and cut it with the trigger happy motherfucking Geto boy. Oh, you got it. Yeah.
I don't listen to a ton of Geto Boys or Southern stuff in general, but as the years go by, I get a greater respect for that regional, highly motivated grudge that drove Scarface, Willie D, and Bushwick Bill to grind as hard as they did. And the rest of that song is not nearly as playful. It's a good track, but if you do go look it up, fair warning, it's rough. That's it for episode 117. Head on back. I've got raw audio that highlights 3 days of play right here in Starkville. Contributing writer Fritz Godard came down. I taught him Space Hulk Death Angel, and we drank beer and played my vintage hip-hop CDs on his boombox for pretty much 3 days straight. Musical and battle highlights from that one coming in mid-June. Until then, I remain your host and friend, the Lord Chief Rocka, #1. May you fight long and well.
Don't fuck with me.